Hi everyone, welcome back to MUS119. Today we're going to talk about Module 2B and we will dive into how music keeps time, just like how a clock keeps track of seconds and minutes. In music, we use meter, pulse, and beat to organize sounds and time. We're going to explore what a meter is, what beats and pulses are, as well as accented versus unaccented beats, time signatures, and tuplets. And by the end of this video, you will understand how these elements work together to create the steady heartbeat of music. A pulse or beat is the steady, repeating heartbeat of music. It is what you tap your foot to while listening to music. So let's take this example. Let's see if you guys know where this comes from. Okay, so if you hear this example and you think it's from the Pink Panther, then you're correct. So I don't know for you guys, but for me, whenever this tune starts playing, even though you hear that long held note, somehow there's this clock in my mind that just gets activated. So for me, it sounds more like 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Somehow there's that pulse happening internally, and that's basically pulse or beat. So next we have accented versus unaccented beats. So an accented beat is a strong beat, and an unaccented beat is a weak beat. So for example, if we have any piece of music that has 3 beats in each group, we will count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the 1 is always emphasized. So let's look at this duple meter. So a duple meter means there are 2 beats in a group, and in this case, you're going to hear so basically. Sorry, let's go back. Basically, you're going to have 1, 2, 1, 2. And then you have next, which is triple meter. In this case, we have the strong beat, and then the weak beat, and then another weak beat. So triple meter means there are 3 beats in a group. So in this case, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. So last we have what's called a quadruple meter. So quadruple means 4 beats in one group. So in this case, it's actually going to be strong, weak, and medium and weak. So when we count this, it will sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here's a metronome that you could listen to. Great. So next we're going to talk about what measures are. A measure or bar, if you live in the UK, that's what you would call it. A measure or a bar in music is a small section of the music that contains a set number of beats separated by bar lines on the staff. So what you see here, these are called bar lines. Okay, normally you would see a single line. I think that's more accurate. We'll call it a bar line, and the bar line separates bars. Okay, so basically from here to here, this is a bar, another bar, another bar. Okay, so usually when we are trying to point at a specific place in a piece of music between musicians, we'll say, oh, let's look at bar number 24 or measure number 25. Just depends on where you live. Measure is more popular in America, but then bar would be in the UK and elsewhere. Okay, but both of these terms are interchangeable. They're exactly the same thing. Okay, so in this case, if we want to talk about this measure in particular, we would say, oh, let's look at the second measure. Okay? Now we're going to talk about meter. So what is meter? Meter is shown by the time signature in music. So time signature is basically these numbers here, 3 and 4, basically two numbers that are, stacked. So a meter is how we group strong and weak beats in music. It shows how many beats are in each measure and what kind of note gets one beat. So time signature looks like a fraction without the line, and it is placed to the right of the clef. This is very important because people usually get confused about where they should be placed. You would always have your clef first, so the treble clef or the bass clef, and then you will have the time signature, which shows you the meter. So in this case, we have 4/4. So basically, the time signature tells us two things. Top number is the number of beats in the measure, and the bottom number is basically what kind of note gets one beat. So in this case, I like to look at this in a more mathematical form. So I like to think that the top number is just the number of beats. So in this case, it's 4. So we know it's 4 of something. And the bottom number shows you what kind of note. So in this case, I like to think of it mathematically. So it's like 4 times 1/4, right? 1/4 means a quarter. Like when you have a dollar, right? If you have a quarter, that's basically 25%, which is 1/4. So I like to think that this means there are 4 quarter notes in a measure. So let's say we have 3/8. It's going to be the same thing. That means we have eighth notes, but then we have 3 of those in a measure. So you're going to see 1, 2, 3 in a bar line, another 1, 2, 3 and a bar line, or its equivalent, right? So 2 eighth notes would equal a quarter. So you could also have something that looks like this in a bar. So hopefully this is clear. Next, we have something called the common time, as indicated by the C here. So a common time is used to refer to 4/4. So if you have 4 quarter notes in a measure, then you could also interchangeably use just the C to show that, hey, this is 4/4, but we'll call it common time. And it's called common time because it is the most frequently used meter in Western music. And that happens across classical, jazz, pop, and any kind of music. So here are some examples of the most commonly seen time signatures. So the first one is 2/4. 2/4 basically just means there are 2 quarter notes. 3/4 means there are 3 quarter notes, 4 quarter notes, 5 quarter notes in each measure, right? I think it should start to feel easier to understand. And if you look at this one, we have 2/8. It just means there are 2 eighth notes in that one measure. In this case, we have 3 eighth notes in that one measure. Okay, so make sure that you understand what the top number means, what the bottom number means. But it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so now that we know what a time signature is and how it tells us the number of beats in a measure and what kind of note gets one beat, I think we're going to get into what's called, simple versus compound meter, where we learn that not all beats are divided the same way in music. So simple meter divides a beat into 2 parts. Simple, 2. Compound meter divides the beat into 3 parts. So compound meter, 3. Okay, I want you guys to remember those numbers. Let's look at simple meter first. So in simple meter, each beat is divided into 2 smaller parts. So for example, if we take the meter 2/4, which means in each measure, we're going to have two quarter notes, right? So in this case, this is an example of a simple meter. So this quarter note can be further divided into two smaller parts, two smaller eighth notes in this case, or it could be written that way as well. So a 2/4 meter, you could see something that looks like this, where you have two quarter notes, or this. Okay, so that's 2/4, and here you can see 3/4, 4/4, 3/4, which is the same one. So simple meter, each beat is divided into two smaller parts, and you would usually count. This is extremely important. You would count 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, and we're gonna have an example for you pretty soon. Compound meter. In compound meter, each beat is divided into three smaller parts. So in this case, you will see these examples of 6/8, 9/8, 12/8. Okay, what do these numbers mean? So let's just take 9/8. Okay, 9/8 means there are going to be 9 eighth notes in a measure. So technically, I would do this. All right, so 9/8 is basically one of the compound meters. So compound meter means that we are going to group these small notes into three groups of three. Okay, so in this case, you would actually see groups of 3 eighth notes, which could also be equal to a dotted quarter. And if you're wondering why and how this works, well, remember a quarter note has two beats. Oh, sorry, it has one beat. It has one beat, and it's equivalent to two eighth notes, right? If we add a dot, that means we add half of its value, which is another eighth note. So a dotted quarter means there are 3 eighth notes. So in compound meter, you're always going to see groups of 3 eighth notes beamed together, like here, or you will see a bunch of dotted quarters. Okay, so that's going to be the telltale sign of a compound meter. So you can go ahead and just memorize 6/8, 9/8, 12/8. These are going to be compound meter. And then the second thing you need to remember is that it's grouped into 3 all the time. It's going to be in 3, or it's going to be dotted quarters. Okay, and in this case, when we count, we're going to actually count not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, you could, it's not wrong, but imagine you have to count the 12/8 meter. You're going to have a pretty hard time just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, I'm already tripping. So an easier way to do this is to count the big beats. So in this case, what we would normally do is to say, we're going to organize this into 1 and 2. And then for the smaller notes, we say and 2 and So basically 6/8 would sound like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, and I'll give you examples. So one of the examples for simple meter is going to be Count on Me by Bruno Mars. So just to avoid getting flagged for copyright issues, I tried to record a very short excerpt of Count on Me by myself. So let's hear the example. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, ooh. And next, we have compound meter. And in this example, we have Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. And same thing, I made a little excerpt. So let's just try to see what makes it sound like a 6/8 meter. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the 4, the 5th, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. All right, now we're going to talk about the musical dilemma. So you see here, there are 6 eighth notes. So when you see this, well, how do we beam them? Is it 3/4 or is it 6/8? Well, the answer is both are correct. It just depends on how you group them. So in 3/4, we're going to count as 1 and 2 and 3. Well, let me make sure that you can visually see it as well. So basically here, it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and. And for 6/8, it's going to be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, so depending on how you group it, it will tell you whether it's 3/4 or 6/8. And just so that you're not going to be confused in your assignments, if you have 3/4, please make sure that each beat is going to be divided into 2 eighth notes. So 3/4, we can have 6 eighth notes in 3/4, but the beaming has to be this way. Okay, so of course, and now you're seeing just a bunch of eighth notes and none of the other kinds of notes. So if you see something like a quarter and eighth notes, make sure that you are still very clear about this. And on the contrary, if you have 6/8, you would need to beam 3 eighth notes together, because only then it gives that 6/8 feel, right? We have 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. But for 3/4, even though it's 6 eighth notes, we count it differently. We count 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so make sure that you're clear about this. And here's another example between 6/8 and 3/4. So in this case, we're going to count 1 and 2 and 1 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and, right? So if I were to use the piano sound to represent what's written here, it will sound like this: 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Okay, so it constantly has this 1, 2. There's this big 1 and 2 beats. Whereas in 3/4, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and constantly. So let's hear the example. This would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay? So now, this looks kind of scary. Wow, what is this? Simple, duple, triple, quadruple. Okay, so this is how you're going to look at it. We have simple meter. Simple meter, remember, it's 2, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4, right? So the more accurate way to call these meters, different types of meter, is actually to say whether it's simple or compound first, followed by whether it's duple, triple, quadruple. So you would normally call a 2/4 meter as a simple duple, For 3/4, you would call it a simple triple. 4/4, simple quadruple. Same thing for 6/8, it's going to be compound duple. Remember, compound means each beat is divided into groups of 3, okay? And then compound triple, which is 9/8, compound quadruple, which is 12/8. So 12/8 basically just means that there are 12 eighth notes in that measure. But, the word compound is going to tell you, hey, each beat is going to be a group of 3 smaller notes, okay? So make sure you pay attention to that. It's very important. All right, so we have simple meter, compound meter, and now we're going to talk about asymmetrical meter. So asymmetrical meter, here are some examples. You have 5/4, 5/8, 5/16, or 7/4, 7/8, 7/16. So 5/8, let's look at this example right here. 5/8, you can see there are 5 eighth notes in each measure, or its equivalent. But then the groupings are asymmetrical, right? So for the first group, you have 2 eighth notes. But for the second one, you have 3 eighth notes. And then it can change. So this is actually kind of exciting, right? Because asymmetrical meter means that the beats in each measure are grouped unevenly. And, it creates a rhythm that feels a bit uneven or off balance, but in a way that can make the music feel more lively and interesting. So that's asymmetrical meter. And now finally we're going to talk about tuplets. So tuplets are a tool that temporarily modify the regular subdivision of beats in a meter. So what does that mean? When we have simple meter, right? Let's just take 4/4. In 4/4, you would normally see 4 quarter notes, or it could also be, let's say 4. We have a quarter note here, and then 2 eighth notes, a quarter note, 2 eighth notes. So in this case, we can count as ta 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 ti ti ta ti ti. All right, so that's what's allowed in simple meter. But what if you just want to be more creative and you think, this thing, instead of having ta ti ti, I want something like ta ti 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 ta. You want to add one more note. You want to make it a group of 3 instead of just 2. But then you also don't want to change the meter to a compound meter, because you just want to temporarily do it like here and there, just to make the music more exciting in some ways. Well, that's where the tuplets come in. So we use tuplets to fit more or fewer notes into a beat than what's usually allowed. So one of the most common forms of tuplets is a triplet, which is a type of tuplet where 3 notes are evenly placed in the time normally taken by 2 notes of the same value. So just like this same example that we're looking at, ta ti ti ta ti ti. Instead of ta ti ti, if you want ta ti ti ti, well, you are technically allowed to do that, but you must add this number on top. That shows that, hey, we're going to fit 3 notes instead of just 2 that you normally allow. Okay, so this number is extremely important. So in here, you can see that in this upper part, you have the normal, 2 eighth notes per quarter note per beat. But then underneath, you have 3 notes called triplets, basically taking the same amount of time that what normally are taken by just 2 eighth notes. Okay, so the number next to the beam, the 3, is usually more than the number of notes normally possible for the duration. It's usually more, but it could also be less, especially when music gets more and more complicated. Some of these rules become a bit more loose. So here are different ways you can write a tuplet. You could just write a 3, on top of the beam, or you could also, add these little square brackets. You see all of these like all the time, like different ways to write them. Or you have this little curve here, which you will learn later, which is called a slur. It makes the music sound smoother, or it instructs the musician to play it in a smoother manner. And you just add the 3 on top. Okay, so if you look at the example on the right, we have a whole note here. I almost forgot what this note is called. So a whole note has 4 beats, right? It has 4 beats, but then, well, it has 4 as in it has 4 quarter notes, 4 beats. But then when we take a whole note and divide it into the smaller form of its note, we're gonna have 2 half notes, right? So instead of just having 2 half notes in that same duration, if you want to have 3 evenly spaced notes, you can do that. Well, how do you do it? You just add that triplet sign, and then you can just, very bravely write those 3 notes in. And it's the same thing for, a half note going into 3 quarter triplets, and so on and so forth. So you can look at the chart and see how things play out. All right, so I don't know if you've heard of this example, but let me just play these 2.5 measures worth of music. So it sounds like this. It's from Nutcracker. So this is a Nutcracker suite from by Tchaikovsky. So yeah, you'll hear it in when Christmas comes. So in this case, imagine if triplets did not exist, if tuplets were not a thing. You would only have not so exciting. But when you have the triplet, all right, so on that note, I hope all of you have a good rest of your day. And if you have any questions, please comment down below in the video, or you can also email me with questions. So yeah, without further ado, I will see you in the next video. Take care.